Irene Woodard has been a student of the Shambhala Buddhist teachings for over 40 years. She held the post of Warrior of the Center for the Shambhala Meditation Center of New York and was the resident director of Shambhala training for 5 years. In her life outside the center, she is a student of Ikebana, a florist, a mother of 2 brilliant adults, one of whom is about to make another small child, Green Faith Fellow, Vice Chair of Green Faith Board of Directors, and co-founder of the Shambhala Touching the Earth Collective. So, almost grandma-to-be, Irene, thank you. Thank you for your teaching. I'm going to put spotlight on you so you're front and center, and thank you for teaching us.
Thank you. So thanks, New York, for asking me to be here and give this talk. And we're going to start with meditation tonight. And we're going to do that for 15 minutes. And I have a gong. And so I'm going to ring us in. And then at about halfway through, I'm going to do another ring and ask you to do something. And then I'll give you instructions then. So we're going to be sitting for about 7 minutes at first. So if you would each get up and go to a window, if there's one in the area, and walk slowly to the window and just look out. And if you don't have a window, um, then just stand up and face your kitchen or someplace in your house. And you're just going to look out and see what you see. Not looking for anything, just see what's there. It said that the sun shines on everything. It doesn't choose to not shine on some things. So that's our discipline, is just to see what we see.
How long did you want us to do that?
It'll be a few minutes. You'll hear a gong. It'll be a few more minutes.
Okay.
Thanks. So please come back to your seated posture. And we'll sit for a few more minutes, and I'll ring the gong to close. So thank you everyone for being here. I want to acknowledge what's going on in our country right now and what happened today. There's a funeral for George Floyd, and the mood in our country is extraordinary. This topic of meditation and action is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I figured it would make sense in some ways, no matter what was going on in the country. But it feels like the perfect topic in terms of how we can all be of benefit to the world right now, is if we experience our meditation and bring it with us wherever we're going. The initial, the first time that I did this was in Madrid this past December. I was able to go to the COP, which the climate talks in Madrid in December, and feeling somewhat guilty about flying there. And so when I knew that I was going to be flying, I made the arrangements with the Shambhala Center there so that I could give a talk there. And we had decided with Alfonso, the Acharya there, that it would be meditation in action. So that was the first time that I sort of gave a talk with this title, and then did another one in March in Boston. And now this one in June, and each one is distinctly different in terms of what the world situation is. And so I have to recontemplate it every time. One of the ways I like to start a talk is to thank my teachers. And there's a whole long list of people that have sort of helped me along the way, and how and so in terms of tonight, I was thinking about who I was going to pick out of this long list. And the first one is thanking the Sakyong for asking the question of what did I want to do in this world? How did I want to help the world? And that charted my course from 2010 till now about working for the climate crisis and taking care of the earth. And then the other two people that I wanted to acknowledge were Fletcher Harper, who's the executive director of Green Faith, and Carolyn Murray. Carolyn Murray is an extraordinary social activist that has just guided me in so many ways this past 2 years in terms of shifting my allegiance to social activism and thinking more about people as well as thinking about the earth. So both of them, Fletcher and Carol, I'm deeply thankful for, and of course, and to the Sakyong for asking the question that headed me in this direction. when I was in Madrid for the COP, after the final day at COP, I was given a quick tour of the 2-hour tour of Madrid with Alfonso. He walked me through the streets, and as I got to the got close to the Shambhala Center, I got nervous because I thought, oh, I haven't taught in a while. I haven't sat in the seat, the speaker seat in a while. And that the last time I had done it was teaching, as you all are familiar with, level 3. I'm the level 3 mama, warrior in the world. And so I thought, oh my goodness, maybe I am doing this I'm actually doing this warrior in the world thing. This is like how I'm living my life right now. And I reviewed the ground path and fruition, which is embedded in me at this point, which is the ground is daring, and I'm sure you all know this, most of you anyway. The path is gentleness, and the fruition is humbleness. And so I thought, well, that's what, I started shifting what I was going to talk about. I said, I could talk about being a warrior in the world, and that these 3 things are essential ingredients to being a warrior in the world, that we're daring, and we're gentle, and we're humble. And I ended up speaking about those 3 things. And when I came back, I spoke to Marty Janowitz, an acharya, one of the acharyas who's another mentor of mine, and said, oh, I talked about these 3 things, and I was emphasizing gentleness. And he said, the problem with Shambhala is that people aren't daring enough. Which also got me thinking in terms of how do we proceed and possibly be more daring. And then eventually sort of stood back and thought, it all depends on the audience, whether the emphasis is going to be on the daring or the gentleness or the humbleness. And so I leave that to each of you to figure out which one you feel like you need to hone in on as a practice, and possibly all 3, or different sort of different words, feelings at different times. Where are we stuck, and where do we need to push ourselves? I've definitely sort of felt that I needed more daring, but gentleness never hurts, and can't be too humble. So please think of those 3 and consider yourself as an activist world of what you need to strengthen. The other thing I just want to back up and say is that in terms of meditation and action, there's a lot that we can talk about, and in terms of, walking to the window, that's a meditation in action, and it's paying attention and all that. And that's part of this. The context of this talk is about being an activist. And that's where I'm sort of what I'm focusing on tonight. But please know there's the rest of the universe that you can you're being active in. So there's 3 parts to when I was thinking about how did this happen? How did I become an activist? What's the story? What's the narrative? And for myself, it was basically showing up was the ground that I showed up. And similarly to when we practice, when we do meditation, sitting meditation, it's, and oftentimes it's hard, and I've experienced it a lot myself and have talked to a lot of other Sangha and students that have the same problem of like not practicing enough or not practicing at all, or how hard it is, and it's hard. So not always, but often it is. So it's a matter of, in terms of activism, it's about showing up. It's about sort of coming along and showing up. And that's the first step. If we don't do that, then nothing happens. And so we have a really great example of somebody who showed up, which was Greta Thunberg in Sweden. It was, I guess, August 7th, 2017, so 2018. She sat down in front of the parliament and made a decision that she was going to show up there regularly. And it's a really simple example, that one person can make a movement, can have an effect. And it wasn't that she hadn't written a book. She just showed up, and she showed up with passion and consistency, and leveraged her presence, her showing up, and her sign, and it was recognized. So, like Greta, the Buddha was one person who just simply couldn't, who also, he left the palace, and he made a life change to leave and let go of his habitual patterns and be in a new place. So his example of getting to know himself, which is about what meditation is, becoming familiar with ourselves, is becoming familiar and friendly with who we are. So we're showing up being ourselves. We're not showing up with wearing any other, and this is I was about to say with a mask, but we are showing up with masks, but we're not covering up our heart, right? In this COVID time, we'll show up with a mask. And the Buddha, in terms of being a warrior, and from the Shambhala Sacred Path of the Warrior, there's the line about we don't have to be afraid of who we are. That's bravery, is not being afraid of who we are. And I have to say, I've spent a lot of my life not being brave, trying to be something other than myself. And in terms of the activist and climate work, was trying to learn, I'm not the scientist and I'm not the scholar. I was simply the person who kept showing up and was friendly and on time and responsible, and didn't cause a ruckus in terms of being with the activist Sangha that I was with, which was Green Faith. So in 2010, when the Sakyong asked us to find, the question was in Letter of the Morning Sun, how do you want to help the world? And I had made a decision that I wanted to take care of the earth. I found an organization called Green Faith, which is an interfaith religious organization that cares about the environment, and did their fellowship program. And I was the first Buddhist, so that made me sort of special, because there had been a lot of other religions, but there had never been a Buddhist fellow. So that was different. But I guess I can't say this loud enough. I was your very, I didn't have any pedigrees, and there were other people in the fellowship that had lots of degrees and knew a whole lot more about climate than I did. And but I started to get comfortable with myself there, and started to learn stuff, and I could be helpful just by being myself and and presenting what I thought, or what my opinion was, and not get in the way, and also being a good partner with other people. Part of showing up is how we present ourselves. And when Green Faith was asked in this past December to go down to Washington, D.C. and represent the faith groups with Jane Fonda and her Fire Drill Fridays. And I had argued in Green Faith that it wasn't something that we as Shambhalians do. We don't wear robes, we're secular Buddhists. And it's been an ongoing argument about photo ops, and like that I'm not wearing a robe. So there was all the discussion around who was going down there, and I had been chosen to be the Buddhist in the event, in the march and in the possible arrest outside of Black Rock. And the night before, I was going to possibly borrow, Arowana had said, "Oh, you can borrow my Raksu." But then she talked to other acharyas, and they didn't think that was a really good idea. So I, sort of at the last minute, I didn't know what I was going to wear. And I got on the phone with Carolyn Murray, the activist, and she said, you want to feel your power. And so sort of that, with that word in terms of power and how I could feel that in terms of how I dressed, I made a decision to wear a black coat, a gray black coat, and to wear my white mala, which I've never, in 40 years, my mala is only something I use when I practice. I've never worn it, but I made the decision that it was important that I look religious, because that was the point. And it was sort of like it wasn't what I thought, it was about what the point of the march was to show that the faith groups were behind what she was trying to affect. And so we each got dressed up. And and it helped. That was what my learning was that it actually helped me feel some power. And the way it sort of reflected, that reflection happened was in September, I had met an elder in Nova Scotia, an Indigenous elder who told this story about how he became the elder and how the grandmothers gave him this wampum. And if he held the wampum, he has to speak the truth. And he said, it's really hard to tell the truth. He said, that's why I need my wampum, because it helps me to be truthful. And so when I thought about that, I just thought, okay, well, then that's what this mala is going to be when I wear it on the outside, is that it's my, it will help me tell the truth. So, so that's about showing up. It's showing up as ourselves, and then maybe stretching what that is for the benefit of the situation. So just a fun, just a story. I mean, what happened was when we met Jane Fonda the night before the march, and because there was some sort of interview, and she found out that I was the Buddhist, and she said, oh, do you know Joan Halifax? She sort of like started to name names, and I didn't know her, but we started to have a connection, and we talked that night about a few things about Buddhism, and then she also was really not afraid to name names, and I sort of said that to her. So this is all to say that a lot of you know that I write haiku, and so that night I wrote her a haiku, and when I saw her the next morning, I read her this haiku, and then I had written a very off-color limerick for her, and was able to give it to her too. In some ways we became friends, and it was just it was, I mean, she doesn't know me by name at this point, I'm sure, but for the event we were friends, and for the march we were friends, and I feel like it's somewhat because I was present enough to just be myself and not try to be something else. So, so that's the second part of being in. First we show up, and then we're present. It's sort of like a furthering of showing up. We can be present. We can stay. We can, just the same way that we walk to the window, we can still be present. We can still be there, and hold a sort of meditative mind. And this is where it's helpful to have the teachings. So we've taken refuge in the Buddha, who was not afraid to be himself. And then we have all these teachings, the Dharma, to help us be activists. And there's the 6 paramitas: generosity, discipline, meditation. I've got to read them all. Patience, exertion, meditation, and prajna. So all six are can be useful as an activist. And one of the ones that I have found has been helpful for me is in the low junk slogans, that the one it's called practicing the three difficulties. Pema said it's her favorite one. And it's that we recognize, quote, neurosis as neurosis. So we recognize the pain of the world. Basically, we recognize our own pain, we recognize the world's pain. And then the second difficulty is that we might do something different. Instead of our habitual way of working with that thing, we might do something different. And then the third difficulty is that we maintain that. We keep doing it rather than falling back into our old habitual pattern. We actually we continue to change our behavior and do something different. So that's basically about showing up and being consistent and coming along. It's called Training in the Three Difficulties. And the other thing that Pema has also said, that in terms of doing this work, is she says our path is about walking into the fire. That's what this path is. The path of warriorship is walking into the fire. This is not to say that we're stupid or we're looking for trouble, but we're actually walking into the fire. And His Holiness Karmapa calls it that we're not spectator. It's not about spectator compassion. It's not. We're not just the person looking from the sidelines. And his example of that is that in the Boston Marathon bombing that happened, there's a story of this man with a white cowboy hat sort of ran towards the situation, and he's this person. There's a video of him sort of helping this man who's lost his leg. And he ran into it. He said that was the example of not spectator compassion. He involved himself. He went towards it. So how to go towards things, and what do we bring? We bring our offerings, we bring ourselves. I've had the opportunity to discover more of my Jewish faith through this interfaith work, and I've gotten more and more, I'm more and more interested in it, and have brought some of the songs that I learned as a little girl, Hebrew songs, to bring them into the interfaith work. So that, and it's about finding what it is that we can each give to a situation. My daughter's lately been calling it, staying in your own lane. It's sort of finding what it is that you can offer to all these actions that are happening, what we can't do at all, and finding what we're good at and what we can offer, and giving that. And that's tricky, because a lot of us feel like we want to do it all. We're some of these people that want to do a lot and want to do it all, and then it may not even decide what to do. It took me a year to figure out how to answer the Sakyong's question. The important thing is to keep contemplating and decide where you want to put your heart. and you can always change, but basically it's this, take it seriously and really consider what it is that you really want to do, how to help the world. And it really might be as simple as just asking somebody to come along with you. That might be the gift that you give to somebody else, is to ask somebody else. Often my experience in terms of being a young woman at the Shambhala Center in the early days, it was somebody had to reach out to me and go, come along, you can do this, you should do this. Because I was like perfectly fine not to talk to anybody. And she said, no, you're coming along with me. Mary Lang, that's who it was, everybody. As far as Buddhists, what we can do on the line, we have to offer other religions and ourselves. We can do Tonglen. We did a retreat in Newark, New Jersey, and there's still Agent Orange that is stored in Newark, New Jersey, and there's a fence around it. And we did a retreat in that there, and so we offered Tonglen there, and just thought of this. We bring the dedication of merit. That's often something that other religions don't have, sort of a final dedication of merit. And at a gong, I'm generally the person that brings the gong along. And then I just remembered this other situation where we were in New Orleans at a outside of New Orleans. There's an isle. It's called Ile de Charles, Jean Charles, and it's the island that is will be covered with the sea level will rise, within the next 20 years, and it will be gone. And we visited there, and there's still 60 people living there. And we thought the most honorable thing to do was to be silent when we got there. And we found out that the residents actually wanted to talk to us. So it's sort of like we had overlaid our idea about what was like the bodhisattva type of thing to do. And fortunately, we woke up fast enough to go, oh, these people really want to talk. And so there was more conversation. They wanted to let us know how they were feeling. So it's basically being being open, when just the way we go to the window and we're open sort of to the possibility that we don't know what necessarily might be the right thing to do, but we're willing to sort of be open enough to shift our gaze. The last thing I wanted to talk about, which is one thing that Trungpa said, was words don't cook rice. And Marty says this all the time. Words don't cook rice. And we have to experience things. We have to do things. It's not enough to sit by. And I think we're all feeling that right now in terms of what does that look like and what does that feel like, and how do we show up? How are we going to show up? And Green Faith was asked in 2016 to there was a standoff at Standing Rock, and people were being hurt, and police were coming at the First Nation, and we Green Faith, we got a phone call right around Halloween that they wanted clergy to show, because they thought if clergy showed up, then the violence would stop. And so there was a bunch of us on the call, and I said, well, they needed things to be read at once they got there, and I said, well, I can write the Buddhist statement. And that night I went to sleep, and when I woke up, somebody had sent me this picture of the bison sort of galloping, I don't know what the word is, running across these plains from there. And I felt like, whoa, I think I'm supposed to go there. I'm not supposed to just write something. And so I did go, and it was certainly an unforgettable moment in my life in terms of seeing people put their lives on the line for something that they love, and for this earth and for water. And I'm forever grateful that Green Faith sent a bunch of us there, and because words don't cook rice. You have to show up. You have, like, it counts to be present. And you don't have to do very much. You just have to hang out there. You just have to be there. But being present is a lot. And for any of us who know, if anybody is ill or something like this, showing up means a lot to people. So in terms of these movement moments, showing up is really important. My problem with that was that I was so numbed by the whole thing. I was just thrown by it that I didn't speak for a while about it. I didn't know what to say. But I did. Eventually somebody asked me to share, and I did. So I think that's all I have to say. I'm hoping you have some ideas and want to have a conversation about what's happening in the world today and how we all might help. So thank you for listening, and we could have a discussion if you like.
Just feel free to unmute yourself and launch in. It's a small group.
Nada.
Hi, Irene.
Hi, Leanne.
Thank you so much for sharing so much of this being present and showing up from your heart. So it's always amazing for me to be around you and to feel your passion and your truth for this world, for everything. And what's resonating with me right now is because we are in this this world where it's very hard to be physically present and showing up. And also being told that we can't show up, and how hard it is to be, as you said, waving from the sidelines or being on the sidelines. It's all I think the most important thing that I have been able to manifest in the last 2 months is a lot of meditation and Tonglen practice. And if I can't show up at protests and whatever, I'm feeling that that is a needed place to be. And even if I'm not showing up, I feel like just following you sometimes has been incredibly inspiring. And I don't know if you can hear me very well. Usually it's better if I'm you're okay. I'm okay with my headphones in. That's really all I'm thinking at the moment, or I'm mostly feeling so grateful that I've had this time with all of you, but to hear your talk, your feelings.
You know, Leanne, it's we can't be too literal in terms of the showing up. It's it's showing up with heart, whatever that looks like. And if it's meditation or if it's interesting. We were there was a Green Faith call a few weeks ago where a woman who was like 85 who can't go out, and she was talking about how her action is that whenever she hears an ambulance go by, she says a prayer. Like that's her action. It's just not not lip service to things.
I love that you're talking about showing up, Irene, because I've been so moved, I think, as all of us have been, or many of us have been in the last several weeks, right in the midst of this pandemic, that people have taken to the streets in protest, literally putting their lives on the line in some ways, in order to say that this will not stand. And I don't know, I was a kid in the 60s, but I'm a 60s activist. I think unless you the fact that it's been not only nationwide but worldwide, people have, in the midst of this worldwide pandemic, shown up and made their voices heard is just so endlessly inspiring to me. A lot of Buddhists out there. They may not know it. A lot of warriors. Let's call them warriors. Yeah.
I heard Martin Luther King giving a talk, and he said, well, it was obviously a recording, and he said that riots are the words of the unheard.
Wow.
And that's been just resonating with me for days, because the protests keep going on, and the protests are being heard. And
I had this thought just recently. I'm just playing with this one, but it was just about sort of the problem with Occupy was that it was too small, and that there's something, and like thinking big. It's sort of like, but I mean, people are in the streets all over the world.
And you know, the other thing that I've been seeing is all of these statements that are being made by corporations and nonprofits and arts organizations about taking a stand. And sometimes it seems very genuine, and sometimes it seems very pro forma. Like this is something we have to do. Blackout Tuesday seems very much like that to me. That it was a music industry initiative that sort of went global, and then it backfired. And the people on the street, to me, are more eloquent than and more forceful and powerful than these words that oftentimes seem to be written by lawyers. These statements about we stand against racism, and yet there's no walk behind that. You'd said something, Irene, that it's not just enough to show up, that you have to be present and you have to be your real self. And again, I think the people who are in the streets are doing that. They're very inspiring.
It's
you-
really, yeah.
Sorry, Camila has her hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
You'll need to unmute Camila.
Yeah. Hello. No, you can continue. It's okay.
Oh, I was just going to say the poignancy or the profundity of cardboard signs or speak so they're so you feel the person in the cardboard sign.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to thank you so much, because the talk was really, really important for my life, because I love meditation, and I'm new in Shambhala, and I was in Asia many years traveling and learning, and I love New York so much. So it's always a pleasure to hear you, New York, and thank you very much. That's what I really want to say, because it's very, very beautiful, and it's very important for all the people of the earth. So I wish you can keep sharing these teachings with everyone, because that's what we need to this beautiful planet. So I hope that Shambhala will be like as much as you can on the earth, helping schools, all systems of education, to see if it's possible, if you can include. Very excited, and I hope that that you keep teaching and
Thank you for coming here. New York?
no,
No.
I'm in Colombia right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're in Colombia.
I'm in
Whoa.
South America. Yeah. So I'm like, wow, it's so amazing. Thank you so much. It's really, I love New York, and it's just really, really beautiful. And my heart is like, I'm very straight, but my heart is like very, very happy. And yeah, I wish this we go everywhere. and it's possible. So please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's all intertwined, the systems. Yeah.
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 Little by little, but I do feel the responsibility to hopefully that can happen, that it's not only New York, but that, South America has more access and all the countries.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really, really important. And because I feel maybe some people don't know very well. They don't really understand. So I think that maybe you can impact a lot during the pandemic, maybe with these teachings for all the government people, for everybody. I think that the whole world should be meditating now.
Well,
it's very, very urgent. Like, I'm very compromised with the planet, and I'm sorry, guys. I know I can be very, very like the Buddha. Just like you said, like some part of me knows that it's okay to be myself, but other parts of me were shy, like little parts. And it happens to all of us, like we have shy parts, or so yeah, please, that would be really beautiful. Please let me know if you do that. And I can see I had a vision. I can see that it's possible, of becoming a whole planet, and very easy, very, very easy.
mm-hmm.
Especially with this beautiful technique that I really value, that you just spoke. So I can see that it's going to happen.
Well, there's tremendous
So
possibility. Yeah, there's tremendous possibility in this open space at this time. So and we're seeing tremendous action and growth happening in just a few weeks. Just like 2 weeks ago, who would have thought that the police would be dismantled? And it's like, whoa, that things have changed very quickly.
Yeah. And it's gonna keep happening. I'm, with much respect, I think that what you talk today is something that, if the whole world tunes that's it, on the TV, let's all do it. Let's all do one content like what you did, meditation in action, for one day, for the whole world, all families of all people, all races, all social classes. And then we see that it was just an era of confusion, but we are all beautiful, and we all want to be happy, even the kings, the queens, like everyone. So I hope that these words that I'm speaking maybe you can propose them to some higher, to you or whatever, people of Shambhala or directors. Like, I don't know anyone.
I think it's up to each of us. Each of us can do it. Each of us can help. We don't have to go to anybody higher. There's tremendous power in a grassroots movement if we each take responsibility, and showing up the way you do. Yeah. So keep showing up.
Yeah, maybe it's good that I clarify one doubt that I have now, because so I'm not taking responsibility maybe of some things if I'm still thinking this way. It's like, it's everyone, but also it's the whole system. So it would be nice if it goes, let's say, through the media, like, let's say, all the world. It's very hard, but what I mean is that it's a question: is it just individually or collectively too?
It's both. It's both.
Both. That's what I mean. What I was trying to say, that you gave me this beautiful teaching, like, okay, it's responsibility, it's individual, but also with the pandemic right now, it shows that we need to get together.
Right.
That's what I meant by,
Right.
you know, and it's doing, the earth is doing it on its own somehow. The planet, it's the era of Aquarius, it's, you know, and it's gonna happen. But if we, you know, we help the earth, and maybe this dream of one day meditation of Shambhala, and, you know, we help the earth too, because it's the earth, it's the system, it's me, it's the earth, it's so many elements.
Right. Right.
So if we, you know, if we keep like giving power to what our hearts want, that's all.
That's perfect. That's perfectly said. If we keep
Yeah.
the power to our heart.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
Barbara?
You're muted.
When you talked about your letter of the morning sun, I thought, you know, that was a powerful thing for you to do, and you followed through on what you wrote. So I immediately want to go back to find out what I wrote, and I think I have followed through on what I wrote to the Sakyong, but I need to go back and verify. But the other thing that I think that maybe is part of who I am is that I do feel a lot of despair. And when I started, you know, being an adult and growing up or actually I was a teenager, it was when the protests were for the Vietnam War, and I was very inspired by Martin Luther King, and that experience sort of changed my life, or actually guided my life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then life was lived, and here I am sort of getting close to, not the end, but I'm older, and there's protests again, and I'm in a situation where I'm scared to go and protest, because if someone knocks me down, I may not get up. I can't run down the street. You know, like for the first time, I realized that there's a limit to some of my meditation in action in terms of the physicality of it. And I didn't realize that until this week, when I did not go out to march. And it felt like, quite like, you know, the day rose on, you know, hope for the future. And maybe my life is, the sun is setting, the day is setting on less hope. And it could be just, that's my nature. I'm not, you know, and that's who I am. And I'm not afraid to be who I am. But this last couple weeks have been very, I feel a lot of despair between the pandemic, the cruelty and the death and the murder, and the fact that the planet's been forgotten during this time. Like just looking out the window at the incredible beauty, you know, it's so fragile. So nothing, you know, inspiring to say. I just feel quite conflicted and confused by what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that 10 years ago, I might have been much more like, oh, I can do anything. But it does feel sort of overwhelming, what's happening right now.
It's huge. I mean, it's tremendous. It's historic. It's a revolution is what's happening. So in terms of how we can show up, it may be to write a check. And that's how we can give from where we sit, from who we are. Sort of like, in some ways, it's that piece about, in terms of what Trungpa is saying, in terms of bravery, not afraid to be who we are. It's sort of like who we are, it's like a 67-year-old woman. Like, so how do we do that? How do we show up to be of benefit in this situation?
I guess, you know me, I'm a first noble truth person, the truth of suffering. And, I thought there was going to be a revolution, after the Vietnam War. I thought there was going to be a revolution here. I thought Obama was the last revolution and something. And so it actually keeps on throwing me back to the first noble truth. And actually getting deeper in a different way in terms of, the reality of samsara and the draw, thinking that samsara can be fixed. And, yet, I keep on chugging along, but it's complicated for me.
Well, I just want to read this portion from the book, right? Like the next to last page. One has to go forward without fear of the. Hello? Yes. One has to go. Did somebody else want to speak?
I think I've muted everyone. Keep going.
Okay. One has to go forward without fear of the unknown. And if one does go a little bit further, one finds it is possible to start without thinking without thinking, I will achieve something, without just living in the future. One must not build fantasies around the future and just use that as one's impetus and source of encouragement. But one should try to get the real feeling of the present moment. That is to say, that meditation can only be put into effect if it is not conditioned by any of our normal ways of dealing with situations. One must practice meditation directly, without expectation or judgment, and without thinking in terms of the future at all. Just leap into it. Jump into it without looking back. It's about jumping into the situation without knowing what the outcome's going to be.
I would say that you epitomize that, and that you keep on doing that. And so, of that ground path and fruition, you do that, the daring step, and without without judging it at all. You do it. So that's very inspiring. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. It feels right. It's like I'm doing sort of what feels in my gut, like feels like the right thing. Thanks for your friendship, Barbara.
And just go ahead and speak up if you want to have a question.
My question was if the samsara is impossible to, what she just said of the samsara, that it's impossible to enlighten somehow, because it's like something that you cannot help somehow, because it's like your own roots, your own you know, it's like nothing can really happen. You know, it's a very personal process. But can you explain me a little bit of samsara? It's like it's not possible to help it. Somehow it's a seed that it's not like available, even if you want to help it. That's how you see it, right?
It's in some ways it's like showing up for samsara. It's like it's like willing to be there. And how Pema described it is that she was describing it as we're going to walk into that fire. We're going to walk in. Like we're the guests. And we're not trying to change it, and we're not running away. But we're going there. Some willingness to go there. And it doesn't mean that we have to sort of I've told that most of you have heard this story about my son when my father was very ill and in intensive care, and Eric Spiegel said, you should bring your son to the intensive care unit. My son was like 8 or 9. And my son knew to stand at the door. Like he knew how much fire he could take, right? He couldn't go into the room. He couldn't go into samsara, but he was willing to stand there and be with it. And we didn't force him to, you know, but it was good for him to see his grandfather, to experience the pain. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it totally kind of organized. Yeah, because it's something that it's personal. It's a personal journey.
Yeah,
that's like my conclusion, kind of thing.
It better be personal. Won't work otherwise.
Yeah.
Christopher, I've been thinking about Aria. Christopher.
Ah, yes.
I've been wondering where she is. Christopher and I had made a friend on 22nd Street that I haven't seen now in years. So,
I haven't seen her either. So I haven't been down in that part of town since the center closed. And right now I'm in Cape Cod since March. So kind of sheltering in place up here, and my heart and my mind is in New York. And that's a wonderful memory. Thank you for reminding me of Aria. I can see her face, that smile. It's like no one else's smile.
Yeah. I just want to say, I'm always available to talk about this. This is one of my favorite topics. So if anybody wants to be in touch, please know that Daniel will share my email. How's that, Daniel? Okay, thank you.
Happy to. I'll just forward it to you. Yeah.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, we could dedicate the merit and.
Thank you so much, Irene. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Irene, can I just do a little bit of housekeeping before we dedicate?
Yeah.
First of all, thank you everyone for coming tonight. This is a tough time to be doing any kind of work like this. So let's be gentle. I want to put in a couple of plugs for the center. First is to be sure to check the website, because we have an ongoing list of programs, and that list of programs is starting to grow. We are now pretty regularly doing the sadhanas, Shambhala sadhana and sadhana of Mahamudra. which have never been more relevant than right now. We have some classes picking up. Some of the folks on this call are in our daily life classes, everyday life classes. And finally, I want to put out a call for volunteers. We are not putting on programs in person, but we still have a growing Zoom program. And we always need more people to help with hosting Zoom programs. So even if you've never actually done it, it's quite easy to do. And you don't have to be in New York to do it. You can do it in Bogota. You can do it in Palm Springs. You can do it in Mexico. So if you would like to help out, we can always use the help. Just write to info@shambhalanyc.org, and we'll try and hook you up. That's my housekeeping.
Okay. And I have a little bit of housekeeping too, which is just a shout out to the Shambhala board. They offered us one of the grants, and we're the Shambhala Touching the Earth Collective received one of the community grants, which is like, we were thrilled that the board has recognized it as an important initiative. So shout out to that. If anybody wants to join, write to me, the Google group. So there's a lot happening there. So great to be with you. And we'll do a dedication of merit. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.